Alright. We good? Alright, let's do our lesson. So, today we're starting out talking about parallel perpendicular lines. We'll talk about them for most of the day. We should all know what parallel and perpendicular lines are already, correct?
Yeah.
What do you know about parallel lines?
They never intersect.
What do you say?
They never intersect.
They never intersect, right? They run right along each other, the same distance the whole way. They never intersect. What about perpendicular lines? What do you know about them?
They do, at a 90-degree.
They do intersect at a 90-degree angle. Very good. Now, what do you know about their slopes in terms of parallel and perpendicular? What are opposites? For which type of lines? Perpendicular. They're opposite what? I heard someone over there say it. Reciprocals, is that what you're going to say? Yeah, they're opposite reciprocals, right? We take the fraction and flip it, make it the opposite, either positive or negative. What about parallel lines? They have the exact same slope, right? So parallel lines, they never intersect. They have the exact same slope. Perpendicular lines, they do intersect, and they actually have opposite reciprocals for slopes. So I don't know, is this part of your fill in the blanks here? Yes, it is. Parallel lines do not cross. They do not intersect. Perpendicular lines cross at 90 degrees and form a right angle. Give you a second to write it down. Good? Okay. So, parallel lines. The definition for parallel lines, the actual definition, is in a plane, lines with the same slope are parallel lines. All vertical lines are parallel. So our example here, if I have an equation for a line, it's y equals negative 3x plus 5. What's the slope of that line? Negative 3, right? This number here. So then if I want to know what's the slope of any line parallel to it? Negative 3. It has to be the exact same slope. Negative 3. Also write negative 3 over 1. That's perfectly fine. Alright? So remember that now when we do our next problem. They have to be the exact same. So our first example here. It asks us graph the line y equals negative 1/2 x plus 6. Well, from this equation, I know that my slope is negative 1/2. I know my y-intercept is 6. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to graph the line. We should all know how to do that. So positive 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if it's a slope of negative 1/2, that means what? Down 1, right 2. Or you can go up 1, left 2. Then you take out your straight edge and draw on your line. So that's the first part of our example here. Just drawing a line. Next it says plot the point negative 5, negative 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down 1. Draw a line through negative 5, negative 1 that is parallel to the first line. Did I just draw a random line or?
No,
Slope is 2.
What's that?
The slope is 2.
Careful, the slope's not 2.
maybe it's
Or it's parallel, so it needs to be the same. So our slope is also going to be negative 1/2. If we were doing perpendicular, then it would be 2. So, parallel line, I know my slope has to be the exact same, so I can use that here. Down 1 over 2. Over 2. Did that right? Okay. Draw on your line. Now the last step says, what is the equation of the second line? Well, what kind of things do we need to know to make an equation?
y-intercept.
The y-intercept and the slope. Do we know the y-intercept in this case? I mean, we can kind of look and see does it look like a nice number? Is it hit at a nice point on there?
Like a 3.75.
Maybe. But do we know it? No. Is there another way we could maybe go about writing an equation? Maybe not slope-intercept form, but what? The point-slope form. Let's try that, right? We know a point on our line, and we know our slope is negative 1/2. So we have everything we need to plug it into the point-slope form. Well, point-slope form was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Right? Where x1 and y1 is my point here. So I'm going to plug in y minus negative 1 would be y plus 1 equals negative 1/2 times x minus negative 5. Well, minus negative 5 would be x plus 5. So, if it asks you just for an equation, I would accept that. You could leave that as your answer. Now, there might be a good chance that it might ask you to write it in slope-intercept form. So where you can go from point-slope to slope-intercept form pretty easily. How can we do it, AJ?
You can distribute the negative 1/2 to x and 5.
Perfect. Distribute negative 1/2. Y plus 1 equals negative 1/2 x minus 5/2. Okay? Then what would I do?
Minus the 1.
Minus the 1. Y equals negative 1/2 x minus 7/2. Right? So if you can't see that right away, just think about this. 5/2 is the same as negative 2.5. Minus 1 would be negative 3.5. If you want to write it as a decimal, that's perfectly okay with me. Right? Or if you get in fraction terms. Negative 5/2 minus what over 2 gives me 1? 2. So instead of writing 1 here, I'm writing minus 2 over 2, which gets me negative 7/2. Okay? So if it asks you to write it in slope-intercept form, that would be your answer. If it doesn't, I'm perfectly okay with you leaving it as point-slope. Okay? Any questions on that? Yes, no? Cool. Let's keep rolling. Perpendicular line. So, the mathematical definition for a perpendicular line is, in a plane, two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is negative 1. Their slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other, right? We just said that earlier. So slopes are opposite reciprocals. Any vertical line is perpendicular to a horizontal line. Remember, reciprocal means I'm going to take that fraction, I'm going to flip it. And opposite just means it's positive, I'm turning it negative, negative, I'm turning it positive. Some people actually call it negative reciprocals. I prefer the term opposite reciprocals, they mean the exact same thing. Okay? So our example then, what is the slope of a line that has the equation y equals negative 1/2 x plus 9? What is the slope of this line right here? Negative 1/2. What is the slope of any line perpendicular to that line?
2.
Not 1/2. Remember, we got to flip our fraction, and then we're going to make it positive. So it's going to become 2 over 1 or just 2. Same thing for the next one. What is the slope of a line y equals 4x minus 2?
4 over 1.
4 over 1. What is the slope of any line perpendicular?
Negative 1/4.
Negative 1/4. Flip the fraction and make it the opposite. Pretty easy. You all agree? Yes? Okay. Then, let's try the same thing we just did, but with perpendicular lines. First it wants us to graph the line 2/3 x minus 4. So, y-intercept of negative 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Slope, 2 over 3. Up 2 over 3. Up 2, 3. And then draw your line in. Second part says plot the point negative 4, 2. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. It's negative 4, 2. Draw a line through that point that is perpendicular to your first line. Well, the slope for my first line was 2/3. If I want it to be perpendicular, I need the opposite reciprocal of 2/3, which would be
Negative 3 halves.
negative 3/2, or negative 3 over 2. So my new line has a slope of negative 3 over 2. So from that point, I'm going down 1, 2, 3 over 2. Down 1, 2, 3 over 2. And I'm going to draw in my line. Oh, don't want to do that. Okay, what is the equation of the new line? Now, this one, we actually have a nice y-intercept, don't we?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's going to be what? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, negative 4. I know my slope is negative 3/2, so I go to write my equation. Y equals negative 3/2 x minus 4. Now, if you want to use point slope form again, where you have your slope, you have the point we gave you, I'll put it into that equation. That's fine with me as well. It's still the equation of the same line, right? That works too. It's up to you, right? All right. Any questions? Yes? No? He's alive? Yeah? Okay. Alright, next problem. Are the following lines parallel, perpendicular, or neither? How do I figure that out? What am I checking? Slopes. So, if I look at my first one, I'll look for my slope. I'm going to subtract 3x. Negative 2y equals negative 3x plus 10. Divide by negative 2, I get y equals positive 3/2 x minus 5. Well, the slope of my first equation is 3/2. The slope of my second equation is negative 3/2. Are those the same? No, so not parallel. Are they opposite reciprocals? No, so they're not perpendicular, so they have to be neither. Good. Alright, since it seems like most of you are working ahead on these, I want this side of the room to do the second one, and you'll have to pick a representative to put on the board. This side of the room, we'll do the third one. You need to pick a representative to put on the board. Find your slopes, compare them. If they're the same, they're parallel. If they're opposite reciprocals, they're perpendicular. If they're neither of those, they're neither. Just do it in your brain. Nice. Do you guys have a representative? Any volunteers?
AJ?
Sure, I'll do it.
AJ's gonna do it?
Sure.
Alright.
Do I have to do all the work?
It'd be great if you did.
Alright.
I really appreciate it. What were you guys? Representative? I'll be the representative. You said what to these things. Now, just because your side only did a certain problem, I'd probably still copy the other one down, but. Johnny, what? Out of his way. Sorry. Thank you, AJ.
You're very welcome. Mr. Whose handwriting is worse?
He also did it wrong. That's close enough, we'll take it.
Did it wrong?
Alright, so look at the second one. AJ flipped this first equation around, right? Got to say y equals mx plus b. Subtracts the x, he gets that the slope is -1. The second one, he distributed it that negative sign in front, made it -x minus 4. Added 2 to both sides, got y equals -x minus 2. So slope is -1. Now technically, based on their slopes, they are parallel, correct? Look at the two equations once.
They're the same.
They're the same, which means what about the two lines?
Neither.
They're the same line. Can parallel lines be the same line? No. So neither. So this is technically a trick question. Be very careful of that on the test. If they were to say like y equals -x minus 2, y equals -x minus 2, technically that's the same line, so they can't be parallel. But I'm not going to worry about that right now. Right? We're looking at slopes. Because if you look at that first equation, do I have to do all this solving to find the slope? Do I have to? Lexi, you're shaking your no? Why are you saying no?
Oh wait, sorry, no, nothing.
You're not saying anything? Okay. Isn't this the same form as y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1?
Yeah.
Yeah, so isn't this my slope right here? That negative sign, which would be a -1. So, do you have to do the work? No. Can you do the work and still get the same answer? Of course. Right? However you feel most comfortable doing it. It's perfectly fine. So, parallel is a good answer for this one. You know, the same line, we're fine. Right? Third one, y equals -5/4 x. My slope is -5/4, right? This is just like -5/4 x plus 0. And Johnny solved the second equation out. Got y equals 4/5 x minus 2. So our slope is going to be 4/5. Those are opposite reciprocals of each other, and they're perpendicular. You know they didn't spell it right.
I couldn't see it when I was writing it, so yeah.
You're good.
Something else.
All right.
Doesn't even look work.
Doesn't. A lot of open ends in those letters.
Yeah, I didn't pass the 3rd grade, so.
Yeah. You'll figure it out one of these days.
Your A looks like a fish.
Yeah, it does look like a fish.
Alright, we're going to keep going. So write equations for parallel and perpendicular lines. Write the equation of a line that passes through point P and is parallel to the line of the given equation. Y equals 4x minus 8. So this should be pretty easy. We did something almost similar to this. Right? They're giving us a point, and they're giving us an equation of a line parallel to this new line we need to make an equation for. Well, normally when we write an equation, you need a couple things, right? You need either the slope and the y-intercept, or a point and the slope. Do we have one of those combos? Yeah, Alvin, which one? The point and the slope, because we know if it's going to be parallel, it needs to have the same slope as the other line. So, we have a point, I have the slope of 4. Well, let's plug it into point slope form then, right? Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Well, plug in your values, right? 3, 9 is my x1, y1. So I get y minus 9 equals 4 times x minus 3. Is that an acceptable answer, you think? What I just wrote right here? Is this an equation for that line? Yeah, it's in point slope form, it's an equation. Now, I'd be very careful when I'm reading directions that it might say, write an equation in slope intercept form. In which case we need to change this to slope-intercept now.
Please excuse this interruption. This is only a test.
I really hope the fire ones don't get wrong. So distribute your 4, add your 9, y equals 4x minus 3. So whether you leave it in point slope form or whether you change it to slope intercept form is up to you. Now, like I said, there will be some problems where it says specifically what form it wants it written in, but unless it says that, you can do either one. Cool? Alright, try the next one, perpendicular to line with the given equation y equals negative 1/3 x minus 6. So perpendicular tells me I need the opposite reciprocal of the first slope, which would be 3/1. Right? Same thing. I have a point, I have the slope, plug it into point slope form. Y minus 5 equals 3 times x minus 4. Doesn't say what form it needs to be in, so that would be a perfectly acceptable answer. Over, I'm just going to solve it out quick. Y minus 5 equals 3x minus 12 plus 5. Y equals 3x minus 7. So guys, like I said, if you want to leave it in that point slope form for now, good on you, that's fine. But please make sure you know how to change it to slope intercept just in case they ask you for that. Okay? Cool? I think we have what, 2 more to do? And we're done?
Yeah.
Alright. Let's go through and do it. So, putting it all together, we're going to write an equation for the line containing the given point and parallel to the given line. Then we're going to graph both lines. Right? So, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make it so I can find my slope, right? I need the slope to figure out my new equation. So, minus 4x, 2y equals negative 4x plus 8, and divide by 2. Y equals negative 2x plus 4. That's my first equation of a line. Once I have that, now I can find my second equation using my point and using my slope, right? If it's parallel, it's got to be the same slope. So, y minus y1, or y minus negative 1 is going to be y plus 1, equals negative 2 times x minus negative 1, or x plus 1. Okay, so I found the equation of my second line. However, is it going to be easy to graph out of that form? No. I mean, I could use the point that I started with, but I still want to find the nice equation to graph with. So I'm going to change it. Distribute my negative 2. Y plus 1 equals negative 2x minus 2. Subtract 1.